What is going on, everyone? This is the Fourth and Fantasy Podcast, episode 28, coming your way. My name's Meek. I always have my co-host to the left, Wu.
What's going on?
Wu, what's going on, man? We were just talking right before we hit record that next week NFL training camp starts. Isn't that crazy to think about?
It's nuts.
NFL training camp starts next week.
It feels like summer just started.
It does, doesn't it? Like we're just coming off the 4th of July, and like, listen. We had a mock in the Bonner Shores League too.
We're so back. It's not even
back,
funny.
baby.
Oh my god, we're all the way back.
We'll get to that in a second, but let's get through the introductions and everything. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, this is the Fourth and Fantasy Podcast. We appreciate you tuning in. We've hit officially 1,500 plus plays across Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. That is thanks to the folks at home listening on an audio format like you are, or watching it on a video format like you are seeing today. We appreciate you. We love you. Keep it going. If you want to follow us on our socials, please make sure you are following us. Twitter at Fourth and Fantasy Pod, Instagram and TikTok at Fourth and Fantasy, YouTube at Fourth and Fantasy. Make sure you give us a like or a follow on our socials. Leave a comment. Give us a rating on the audio formats, because you never know, you may see yourself on the show.
True that. But
with that being said, let's get into our quick question of the day. So like I hinted at before, Will, the boys got together. We got a mock going today.
Yes.
So just for context, everyone, Wu and I, worked a summer job together, and all of the people that we work together, we have had a redraft league going now for
5 years.
I want to say it's like 5 or 4 years. So obviously the championship belt that you see up here in the cubby, won by yours truly.
Flexes it whenever he can.
Whenever I can, I have to plug it. That is from that redraft league, and that has just kind of, from working, at our summer job and just talking fantasy football. There would be days where it's raining and it's nobody's there, and we just would rip mock drafts like it was nobody's business. I think there was almost one time we got a full 12 team mock draft.
Oh yeah.
So
we were usually rolling 5 deep at least.
Easy. So I mean, listen, I was back to work there today. It was a rainy day. There was nothing going on. So I shot a text out to the boys and I said, mock today, ? And lo and behold, we got 2, 4, 6, 7 of the original 12 to hop into our mock draft. And so we're going to break that down for you today. So we're looking at it right now. If we have the opportunity to put it on the screen, we will for you.
For sure.
But as I'm looking, Wu, you had the third pick,
Sure did.
And Jamar Chase falls into your lap.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I had to do it, obviously, but that's Steve's got the first pick. He's not going to be dumb. He's going to take Jamar Chase.
Or is it Bijan?
No, because
Bijan.
No, because our other good friend Colin did this last summer. All summer he's like CD,
legendary.
And and draft night comes up, Christian McCaffrey on the board. So yeah. I'm not falling for any facade.com. Jamar Chase is not going to be on my team, but I was able to get him today, so that was cool.
Yeah, really cool. I had the 12th pick because, your boy won the league. And I went back-to-back wide receivers. I did the combo tandem of A.J. Brown, Ladd McConkey. Kind of liked it. I did follow up with Jalen Hurts to stack with A.J. Brown, so I was feeling pretty good about that. Some other things, notice. I'm looking at Rondo's team, and I count 1, 2, 3, 4.
And that's not even
5.
the craziest part about his draft. That's not even the craziest part about his draft.
Running backs on his roster. Obviously our good friend Rondo, the show, is a running back fiend. But to give some more context about this league, so we play in a keeper league. So it's a 12-team league, keeper league. But the rules of this keeper league is that you are allowed to keep one player as long as that this player was not drafted in the first 3 rounds, because if you decide to keep that person, you would receive them 3 rounds earlier than what you did last year. So, just for my team, my keeper this year, probably it's still up in the air, but, is going to be Devon Achane. And so I had drafted Devon Achane in the 7th round last year. So he becomes 3 rounds earlier, so he'd be a 4th round pick for me, which is good value. And you probably think, Meek, Devon Achane in the 4th round, that's great. No. There are people in this draft that have way better.
It's nuts.
Like Rondo, who we talked about, he has Kyron Williams as his 11th round pick. Insane,
sickening.
We have another good friend, BK, who's got Puka Nacua as an 11th round pick. I will say it again, ladies and gentlemen, Puka Nacua as an 11th round pick. Like it's
Sick.
just it's nut stuff.
Sick.
You know what I mean? But we have a great time. Busting each other up and talking about it. Is there anything else about this mock draft that someone you want to call out and point out?
Well, going off of the 11th round keeper, I have Bucky Irving in the 11th round, and somehow I have the worst keeper out of everyone in the 11th round. It makes no sense. Yeah, I mean, for this draft specifically, I ended up going 4 wide receivers off the board right away. I went Chase, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, Zay Flowers, and
which is nuts.
It was nuts, but like every single name that was there, I'm like, well, how do I not take this guy?
Yeah.
And I knew at some point I had to go running back, especially with how many crazy running back keepers there are. Chase Brown, Kyron Williams, just to name a couple. It's like at some point I was gonna have to take him. I took him a little bit later. Not a huge fan of what I ended up with, but this is only the first mock draft.
There's only one,
so I'm not worried.
There's multiple ones.
Yeah.
I think. So I'll kick it to you. I'll go first, Wu, and then I'll kick it to you. Just out of your personal team, I want to know what your favorite pick of the mock draft was. Outside of your keeper, we won't count that. So I'm looking at mine, and I think my favorite pick of our mock draft is taking Quinshon Judkins at the 601.
You suck for that.
Now listen, like I know it was a reach, but I really think he's going to smash this year. I think we've talked about it all summer, but I'm going to do it again. That he's in an offense that is catered to his play style. Cleveland loves to establish the run and then use everything else off of play action, and I think they got a guy who can be a true 3-down back. The only question coming out of college for him was really his pass blocking. He can catch the football, but it's like, can he develop as a pass blocker? But even if he's an early down guy, goal line guy, and he can establish himself as the one, I think Cleveland's going to have a great year, and 2, how does he not smash?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like how does he not just become the dude and just beat the ADP of I'll look right now because he's definitely not going at the 601.
No, it was I'm later in that round. I was a 6'10", and the round prior I took Aaron Jones. I was trying to play the ADP game. I thought nobody was scrolling down that low. I think he's going
he's going at the 705
turn.
Right now average.
Yeah.
His ADP is a 705.
Yeah, that's
too low. Way too low.
Too low.
So,
let him sit there all off season, please.
So some names going around him at the 705. After him before him are Aaron Jones, RJ Harvey, Tyrone Tracy, Tony Pollard. All names I would take. Isaiah Pacheco. All names I would take ahead of him.
Absolutely.
Currently, right now.
Oh yeah.
All right, I'm gonna kick it to you. What is one pick of this mock draft that we did that you liked the most?
I'm struggling to find like a one pick, so it's kind of a cop out here. But like my run of 4 receivers off the board, it is 4 ones. It is 4 dogs. Like we all know. Like I already said, I'm not going to get Jamar Chase, but for the purposes of this mock draft, like we all know what Jamar Chase is capable of.
Sure.
Garrett Wilson is the one in that offense. He's now with his college quarterback. I'm really hoping that sparks him up there, even if they stink. Like just pepper the guy with the ball. Just give him the ball. Let him make plays.
Malik Neighbor style. Just give him a bunch of targets.
Marvin Harrison, another one in his offense. I'm expecting them to have a huge year with. Last year, no, it was not good, but it was due to where he was being drafted, which is why it wasn't good. It's not like he was putrid, but it's how hyped up he was, and rightfully so because he was the dog in college. But he was so hyped up. He was being drafted at the end of the first round, second round turn.
Yep.
Like he had to beat that performance, in order to be worth that ADP, and he didn't. And that's all right. And we see the year 2 breakouts all the time from wide receivers. It's a common theme with these young wide receivers. So I'm really excited for him. And then like Zay Flowers, another one in his offense. We've talked about Mark Andrews and how he's probably going to start getting phased out of this offense as if he wasn't last year already. So I just in a full PPR league, which is what we play, like I don't know how like on a week to week basis, if I was going up against those 4 wide receivers every week, I'd be
shaking
like, oh my
boots.
god! I'd be like, oh my god, I have no chance.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's tough going 4 wide receivers right off the bat like that, and not really having any other position. But I mean, man, it's got to strike some fear into some other teams. I would think if I could get that in August,
that'd be insane.
I don't know. I'd be pretty happy.
I would say, looking at your team, the one pick I do love that kind of like obviously the run of 4 wide receivers, and if that can work during the season, that's phenomenal.
Right.
The one pick that I do love though is. You were able to score Kyler Murray in the 9th round to stack with Marvin Harrison Jr. And obviously later on this summer, we'll be giving you, some draft 101 tips to kind of help you out in your leagues. And one thing I highly suggest doing is stacking a quarterback with a wide receiver on your roster.
It's so fun.
Number one, it is so fun, and it's just so great to see that tandem go off and have a great day. When that happens, you win your week.
And you feel like
out.
such a genius, like such a galaxy brain.
Right, exactly. And the fact that you could score Kyler Murray in the 9th round to pair with Marvin Harrison Jr., who we do believe is going to bounce back, hint, hint, wink, wink. He's going to be on, today's topic of the show. But, the fact that you could pair him and not have to go out and reach for any of those players, they just fell into your lap. That's the perfect way to do it. And I love that.
So as soon as Garrett Wilson, I took him in the 2nd round, I'm thinking, okay, I'm just going to wait on quarterback. Nobody's taking Justin Fields. I'll do that. I want to see what this team looks like in a situation like that, because realistically, Justin Fields is a guy I'm thinking about in redraft.
Mm-hmm.
So I take Garrett Wilson. I'm like, all right, I'll kind of just wait on Justin Fields, and we'll just see how the rest of the draft goes. And then Marvin Harrison falls to me. I'm like, all right, well, now I have 2 options here. I can go Kyler or Justin Fields, but I'm not going to go too early on Kyler. I'm kind of just going to see what happens. And it got to the 6th round. I'm like, all right, now I'm probably going to have to start making a decision on whether I actually want to go Kyler or not. So I take DeAndre Swift in the 6th round, and, it comes back to me, and I'm like, this is probably the time I have to take Kyler. And I was like, you know what? I need another running back here. I ended up taking Travis Etienne. I was like, I'll wait it out. I still have Justin Fields in my back pocket. Then we get back to the 8th round. He's still there. I'm like, you know what? There's a quarterback already off. There's the 2 teams after me already had quarterbacks. I'll see what happens. And he falls again, and it gets to the 9th round. I'm like, all right.
You got it.
I have to do it. So, yeah, the stack was awesome. The 4 wide receivers I love. The running backs, iffy. I think there's some good point potential there, but they're not gonna intimidate you as much as the wide receivers I have. So, I mean, that's kind of the risk reward game you play.
I agree. All right. So we're going to talk about a quick topic or quick news in the NFL. Obviously last episode we talked to you about the trade with Pittsburgh and Miami, and, Pittsburgh acquiring Jonnu Smith. I think I think I had hinted, keep an eye out for Michael Mayer to maybe be on the move. I was dead wrong. Let me just say I'm dead wrong. So we got this. I think this happened literally the day after this trade. So this is probably old news for everyone, but I'm just still appalled at even the fact that this even happened. The tight end formerly known as Darren Waller has resurrected himself from the grave. The Giants and the Dolphins were able to work out a trade where the Dolphins sent a 2026 6th round in exchange for Waller and a conditional 2027 7th round pick. So, I mean, it looks like Darren Waller is the starting tight end in Miami now, but I don't know.
He saw Kelsey Plum get traded, and he's like, now I have to do something. I have to do something.
So I don't know why this would even be a relevant thing, but
how old is he?
Here he is. I want to say he's 32, 33. Darren Waller, if obviously I love Darren Waller the player.
32.
He's 32. I love Darren Waller the player when he was playing in Vegas, and then he only played 1 year in New York before he hung it up. Decided to chase the rap career, and then the rap career must not have bear fruit for him. So he said, "Let me come back to the NFL." But what are your initial thoughts here with Darren Waller being the tight end of the Miami Dolphins?
I think it's great that the Giants got a pick out of it.
Yeah, that's great.
Even if it was a 7th round pick,
a 6th they got.
The fact that they got anything is just that made me laugh. The fact because he retired with them, he had to sign.
He was still under contract.
Yeah, so
they had to trade him.
I thought that whole scenario was funny, but I mean, if he's gonna go anywhere, I guess you go to Miami where there's no tight end. I don't really know what he's got. I don't know what kind of juice he has. Depth chart wise, it makes sense for Miami. They need the help. They just sent off Jonnu Smith coming off a great year. And the offense, I think it could work, but I haven't seen this guy play football in, what has it been, 2 years now?
It might
even
be 2
3
years. I think it's 2 years.
So it's the situation makes sense. The offense, it's an above average offense. It was coming off a great year in 2023. I think there's the situation makes sense and it can work, but I just don't know what Darren Waller looks like these days. I don't know.
I'm going to tell you right now.
I guess I'm not excited. Is basically what I'm trying to say.
This is my, and it could be hot take or whatever. This is the biggest smoke and mirrors play I've ever seen in my life. the benefactors from this is going to be Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
Yeah.
I think I'm in on Tyreek Hill this year.
Yeah.
I was on the fence with him. You know what I mean? Obviously, having that bust year, he's going into his 30-year-old season. But with Darren Waller there was a real issue with Jonnu Smith being there. Like, he had a true connection with Tua. They were feeding. I want to say Jonnu had like a 20% target share last year, and that was when Tyreek played all 17 games. So you get him out of there. You bring in Darren Waller, which obviously they're probably expecting to use him for targets, but I don't expect much out of him. I think more of those targets are going to go to Devon Achane, who now I'm in love with. It's going to go to Tyreek Hill, and it's going to go to Jalen Waddle. I think it's just more targets for the main pass catchers in Miami, and that's I think what we love to see. I think predicting around 3 main pass catchers is way better than predicting around 4 because then it's a crapshoot.
Right.
So I think Tyreek Hill is in play now in redraft leagues. I think you could take a stab at Jalen Waddle, although I'm a little still shaky on him. And I think Devon Achane's all wheels up. Like, he may have the potential to be the running back 1 this year. So, I'm excited for the other pieces, not excited for Darren Waller, but I think that's my official take as of right now on July 7th.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. When it helps Tyreek Hill and Waddle more than it does like Darren Waller, I think you're right. Like, it's probably not going to end up meaning anything. If he is productive, great. I'm not taking a shot at him. I'll tell you that.
There's a dynasty league out there where someone or somebody have both Devon Achane and Tyreek Hill on their dynasty roster. I'm just saying.
Who?
It's us.
Oh, that's right.
That's us,
like,
baby.
what are we talking about?
It's us.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
We have Devon Achane and Tyreek Hill on this roster.
Yeah, it's exciting. So wasn't Tyreek Hill like our third wide receiver?
He was our third wide receiver behind Amon-Ra St. Brown and Terry McLaurin. I'm looking at the team right now.
Yeah, we're going to smoke that.
Yeah, this is going to go great. I'm ready for it now. So that was the only news around the NFL that we wanted to share with you. Now is the time to get into our main topic of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking bounce back candidates of 2025. And here's loosely the criteria that, we were looking at as we were looking into bounce back candidates. We were looking for players who finished outside of, the top 24 of their position, whether a running back or receiver, top 12 if they were a quarterback or tight end. But obviously this is someone who is either coming off of a terrible season, coming back from injury, and they didn't do so well in 2024. And we're here to kind of give you the rationale as to why you would want to invest in this player in your for your league coming up this year, and why you may want to draft him. We're gonna probably highlight their ADP for you, and just kind of tell you where they're going around what certain position and see if it's worth it, not worth it. But I'm excited, Boo. I don't know about you.
Yeah, definitely more redraft centric.
Yeah.
However, there is considerations here, for dynasty. It's probably going to be a little bit harder to acquire them. But I would say, at least for my players, more of my arguments are for redraft purposes.
Yeah, me too. So with that being said, I'm going to kick it off. Oh, one last thing. I think so. We have two players per position.
Yes.
So 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, just like how we did our high risk or high reward episode last week.
Exact same.
We're gonna do 2 per. So I'm gonna kick it off first. First one I'm gonna talk about is Bryce Young of the Carolina Panthers, and I can hear Rondo now saying, Rondo's not a believer of the guy
of
Bryce
his own
Young,
quarterback.
Of his own quarterback. I don't get it. But anyways, Bryce Young is a huge bounce back candidate. And there's 2 sets of dates that I want for everyone to kind of take in. First set is last year, weeks 1 through 7, where Bryce Young was the quarterback 42. Yes, I'm going to say it again. He was the quarterback 42.
How many quarterbacks start?
32.
Yeah.
So he was the quarterback 42, where he only had 299 passing yards and 3 interceptions. If you remember back to there, that was the beginning of the season where, started off very poorly. And then by week 3, he was benched, and, you thought Bryce Young was just another first overall draft pick that was thrown into the trash to be forgot about, going forward. We then move on to weeks 8 to 18, the last 10 weeks of the season, or 11 weeks of the season, and Bryce Young is the quarterback 12. So
it's an eyebrow raiser.
If you started Bryce Young from week 8 to week 18, he'd have been a QB1 for you on your fantasy roster. And in that time, he had 2,104 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 223 rushing yards, and five rushing touchdowns. He finally takes a step forward. As the QB we all expected him to be. He's starting to kind of fill those number 1 overall pick shoes, and he does it with being able to rush. He's running the ball way more than he did in college, way more than he did in his rookie season, and it seemed to almost help him get his mojo back. If you watched any of those games, he really started to get that swag back to him, and was really starting to kind of play within himself and not overthink everything. You know what I mean? He wasn't playing outside of himself, and it helped him. He was the QB12. So then you take that and you parlay that into the offseason where, the Carolina Panthers believe they have their dude, and they're going to treat it as such. So with the 8th overall pick, obviously they could have gone defense to, help bolster the defense and help them become a better team. But they believed in their guy, and they drafted Teteroa McMillan, the rookie wide receiver from Arizona that, Wu and I both are, love and think is a phenomenal prospect. So with that being said, I think you can expect more passes from Bryce Young. And I think a more dynamic, dynamic sense in this offense where, it may not just be, peppering, hyper-targeting McMillan, but it's also Leggett gets involved, Chuba Hubbard gets involved. I think it becomes a more dynamic offense. And if that happens, those are all great things for Bryce Young. And the last thing I want to point out, Panthers have the 5th easiest schedule, according to DraftKings. So
Caesar always knows.
They always know. And so I think they're going to be in games a lot more, which means that, they're going to expect Bryce Young to basically go out and win them games. So that is my full rationale for Bryce Young as being a bounce back candidate. What do you think? You think I'm onto something, or you think I'm just completely off?
No, you're definitely onto something. I think we've both been we've been in lockstep with Bryce Young over the offseason. We've talked about him a bunch of times. I think you're a little bit higher on him than I am.
Oh yeah.
I think my best case scenario for Bryce Young is if he finishes in the 15 to 12 range. I think that would be a good season out of Bryce Young, especially what we've seen out of him in the past. What I will say is if the rushing numbers continue the way they are, just in that 10-week span, 223 rushing yards. I don't know his numbers off the top of my head, but if he can continue to, add on to those rushing numbers, that's when I think he can start to creep up into the 12 to 10 range. I don't know if the arm's going to do it for him. I just don't know if Carolina's going to score enough points and if the offense is going to be that explosive for him, to crack that top 12 just based off throwing the ball. So that's what I mean. If he can, start running the ball a little bit more, yeah, I think 15 to 12 is probably where I'm thinking for Bryce Young this year. But I do agree that, they spent the draft capital on a receiver for him. They gave Chuba Hubbard money, that shows that they have confidence in the running game. And they have some interesting defensive pieces that can keep them in a game. So I think if the Carolina's doing all the right things, I think it's good that they still have confidence in their young quarterback, especially with what he's shown over those first 2 rocky years. So yeah, I'm all for Bryce Young.
Yeah, and just for context, it looks like currently right now he is going as the quarterback 24. Wow. So he's not someone that you can you could take him with the very last pick of your draft, or if you wanted to, here's another heads up play, if you wanted to draft somebody who you believe in who's hurt, like someone like Brandon Ayuk, or takes and throw them on your IR spot, then you just pick them up on waivers right at the end of the draft, and no one's gonna care. And then you can let him sit on your bench and develop, and if he actually starts to break out like I'm saying he is, then you just scored yourself an easy 100%. Obviously and I'm not sitting here saying Bryce Young is going to be like the QB5, but I think his ceiling is probably what he finished the second half of last year, is the QB12. If he can finish as the QB12, you just scored big time,
Yes.
you know, in your drafts. So,
Yeah, you have to think about where you're drafting these guys. That's where the value comes in.
right, exactly. So, you know, he's someone that you can take with the very last pick of your draft, or probably pick him up on waivers and stash him, especially if you're someone who drafted Tedero and McMillan. You know what I mean? Just to have that, you know, that potential stack of him and you know, Bryce Young, and then you can just go ahead and play him on a week that you think Bryce Young's going to have a monster week, and then you win yourself your week. So
I'm here for it.
But Wu, I'm going to kick it to you for your quarterback bounce back player.
Yeah, I'm going to go another quarterback from that same draft class. I'm going to go C.J. Stroud. You know, I want to go back to his rookie year in 2023. Plays 15 games. He scores 273 fantasy points. He finishes as a QB 11. Going into the offseason, into last year, everyone's picking Houston to go to the Super Bowl. And it's like, oh my God, you know, we just found our next, you know, this is the next great young quarterback in the league. And then last year, he plays 17 games, plays a full year, only scores 226 fantasy points. He's a QB 18. In his rookie year, he had less passing attempts and less completions than he did last year. The two numbers I want to talk about and the difference between his rookie year and his sophomore year is the touchdown and interception numbers, is because last year he did not take care of the ball at all. His rookie year, he throws for 23 passing touchdowns and only 5 interceptions. He also had 3 touchdowns on the ground, which was definitely helped his case. Last year, he has 20 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and no rushing touchdowns. So definitely have to take care of the ball this year. You know,
do we think though that's a product of Bobby Slowick taking a huge step back as an offensive coordinator, or do we think that's just, C.J. Stroud's fault?
It's got to be both. I mean, you know, sure, Bobby Slowick's the one calling the plays, but at the end of the day, C.J. Stroud, when he throws the ball, he's the last one to touch it. It's at that point, it's in his hands.
It's his responsibility
on where he's putting it. And even if the play calling is that bad, you know, as a quarterback, you have to realize, okay, I'm not just going to force the ball just because, you know, that's what the play design is for. You have to be able to adjust on the fly. The big red flag for me, you know, with C.J. Stroud, as I'm making this argument, is the offensive line is such a problem. Last year, he was sacked 52 times. Yeah. I don't know where that ranks among other NFL quarterbacks, but it's got to be up there.
Let me see if I can I'll find that for you.
And then, already knowing this, they go out and trade Laramie Tunsil, their left tackle, and that's C.J. Stroud's blind spot. But when it comes to the additions they made, they added Cam Robinson, Trent Brown, Laken Tomlinson, and then they drafted Ariante Ursary. I butched that. I don't care. I don't know how to say that name, but you know, these are the pieces that they added, you know, trying to bolster up the offensive line, give C.J. Stroud a chance. I mean, we saw that playoff game against Kansas City. The guy had no shot.
Yeah.
I mean, Kansas City was sending the house at him, and they knew it was coming, and they still couldn't stop it.
He was second. Caleb was first with 67. He was second with 52.
Sounds about right.
So,
but the positives here for C.J. Stroud, new offensive coordinator is Nick Caley. He is the former Rams passing game coordinator and tight end coach, so he's under the McVay tree. Mm-hmm. I like that. I'm on record saying how much I like pieces of Sean McVay's offense.
Yep.
This plays into that. He also worked with the Patriots from 2015 to 2022, so he's a Super Bowl champion as well.
Yeah, he is.
So those are two big things that I like for this new offensive coordinator coming in. Houston also drafts 2 rookie wide receivers, the Iowa State teammates, Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins. I think that brings some excitement to this offense. 2 new guys he can start throwing the ball to. And then when you look at his ADP, right now he's going in at the 10:07. He's the QB 15 off the board at that point. He's going behind guys like Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Caleb Williams. I'm taking Caleb Williams above C.J. Stroud, but like if it comes down to Jordan Love, C.J. Stroud, and Brock Purdy, I'm on the clock. Like Jordan Love doesn't blow me away enough for me to take him ahead of C.J. Stroud. Brock Purdy doesn't blow me out of the water enough to take him ahead of C.J. Stroud. Like I think those two guys, like I think they're all kind of in the same category. So I think with the new offense coordinator, I think is the biggest piece here. And what really makes me nervous is what that offensive line is going to look like because of how much of a problem it was last year.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it now, and I was totally in on him being, you know, someone I'd be willing to target in drafts. But when you bring up the offensive line problems, and he's not someone who is going to extend plays or be he's not a mobile guy.
No.
He's a pocket passing quarterback.
But God, he has an arm.
You know what I mean? He's a phenomenal arm. But the thing is he going to have time to throw the ball? And I just kind of I ran that exercise that you just said. Of C.J. Stroud, Love, and Purdy. Like I think I take Love over C.J. Stroud.
I don't know. It doesn't there's not enough there for me to be like, yeah, no, I'm definitely going Jordan Love.
Yeah, I just think it's a better offense. It's a more cohesive team. And it's Mike LaFleur. You know what I mean? Like, no offense to D'Amico Ryans, but like you can book it that Green Bay is going to get you at least 11 wins. In a season. I think Houston is striving to be there, and they're essentially there. They're the team to beat in the AFC South. But I think if it were me on the clock and I had to choose between Jordan Love and C.J. Stroud, I think I'd take Love. It seems weird, and maybe I gotta kind of look through all of the data, but him losing Laramie Tunsil, who is easily a top 5 left tackle in this league, like it's kind of scary,
I mean, I'll put it to you this way: Jordan Love had 16 more fantasy points than C.J. Stroud did last year, and we were oohing and ahhing how bad that Texans offense was.
But it also got worse in the offensive line.
I mean, I guess, but I don't know. I think for me, I'll also say this is like the character of C.J. Stroud. I think he carries himself very well.
Yes.
Speaks very well in the media.
He's a leader.
He holds himself, to a high standard, and for him to light the world on fire like he did his rookie year, to the point where we're talking Houston Texans going to the Super Bowl after those dog years that they had before then, to be in a position to draft C.J. Stroud, and like how quickly that turnaround was. Okay, yeah, now he's the guy, we're going to the Super Bowl. And then for him to come out last year and for nothing to work, it just looked bad. And they still made the playoffs. I just think the personal competitiveness within him, like I don't think he's going to let that happen 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I totally get that. All right, we're going to move on to the running back position. I'm going to be first to give you.
I'm covering my ears for this one.
Yeah, listen, everyone, make sure you have the bucket next to you. I apologize. It's going to sound gross. My bounce back pick is going to be Ramondre Stevenson, running back of the New England Patriots. Now, I'll give you a second to, wipe your mouth and all that stuff. But my rationale for Ramondre Stevenson being a bounce back candidate is two things. My first one is a question for you is, do we really believe Travion Henderson can take over the feature running back role in New England? I'll kick it to you, Will.
Maybe not year one.
Okay.
So I hear you now. I'm following. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
And so here are the things that we've heard. If you go out and you check the internet, reports coming out of minicamp was that Henderson still had a lot to learn. It's not what you want to expect from a rookie running back who you eventually want to take the feature role. You want him to already be ahead of schedule, ready to go, and that he'd eventually take over. We also look at Josh McDaniels' offense. It always has a featured receiving back that comes in on third downs, right? So Kevin Harris, James White, Danny Woodhead, that's the role that Travion Henderson is fulfilling this year. Teams, when they draft players or, sign free agents, they're looking for how do they fit my scheme? You know what I mean? And so we're talking about, Josh McDaniels and his scheme. He has a receiving running back. How does that person fit my scheme? That's Travion Henderson. So that's not someone that you're going to expect to get touches, in the goal line, in the red zone and things like that. He definitely could and work his way there 100%, but I don't think it's going to happen in year one. I'm, and this isn't me hating on Travion Henderson. I think he will eventually be the guy, but he won't be this year, and by week one. The second thing I want to highlight, and I wish I had, the author of this tweet, but I was scrolling through Twitter one day and they highlighted Ramondre Stevenson's fumbling issues. And the big thing that he pointed out is whoever led the league in fumbles that year, the next year, it was a non-issue. Huh. So whoever led the league in, and I, one of the people that I remembered was Antonio Gibson. Huge fumbling issue one year. The next year, he maybe had one or none. Like that was the number.
But is that a product of them losing snaps?
I don't know.
That's just what I thought of.
Right. I don't think necessarily about snaps. The way I took that stat as, that was something that they took in the offseason as an issue. They recognized all these players and they corrected it, so it became a non-issue. Now, could it be because they got benched or, they were limited snaps because of the play the year before? Maybe. But, I think that this is something that is a true issue that Ramondre Stevenson is going to address in the offseason and come into the year, and that will be a moot point. Because really, if you take that out of, the argument against him, there really isn't anything else. You know what I mean? He's someone who fits the scheme. He's going to be a bruising back to start and just pound through the line. And if this team takes a step forward, meaning the New England Patriots, I think, he could see some fantasy value, in the red zone, getting touchdowns and getting meaningful touches. And, just to talk about his, ADP right now, he's going at the 905. He's going as the running back 48. So basically, if you take him at the running back 48, he's the fourth wide running back, hopefully, on your team. So at that point, what do you have to lose by taking him as the fourth running back on your team?
Sure.
And who knows? He does he fix the fumbling problem? Does New England become a good offense? Then there's fantasy value there.
Yeah.
I know the pick is gross, but sometimes you have to take those picks that seem gross on paper to get the fantasy value to help your team in the future.
No, it's a valid argument, and the fumbling piece is interesting. I had no idea of if you lead the league this year, it's not really a problem.
Yeah.
I do think that the Travion Henderson hype has been pretty big, since the draft. I think the draft capital is there for him, and I think that's why that argument is being made. I don't think this is honestly, I kind of compare this Travion Henderson situation a little bit to Najee and Omarion Hampton, where we don't really know what year one is going to look like. It could be week one, and they give the keys to the young guys and they just let it rip. Or, maybe it's like more after like week 8, or maybe if they have a late bye and they come back after that, and maybe that transition, starts to happen. But begin the year, guys like Ramondre Stevenson and Najee Harris, they're the NFL vets. This is their backfield. They'll take over at first. And I think you're right. There is going to be some value there, even if you get, 8 starting weeks out of Ramondre. Where he's being drafted, who cares? At that point, he's maybe a flex player on your roster. At that point in the draft, he might just be a bench player.
Right, and he could be trade bait for you. Later on in the year, like he steps up and has a couple of good weeks. Then it's like, okay, I don't really need him, and it looks like Travion Henderson's almost ready to go.
Yeah.
Let me trade him out now and get some value before he actually is benched or whatever it may be.
If you do want to get some if there is trade value possible there, you have to be ready to pull the trigger at the right moment. You cannot wait too long, otherwise you're screwed.
Absolutely, I agree. So your running back bounce back candidate is
Travis Etienne. I've talked about him before. I'm doubling down on it. I can't believe it. I think this goes to show how forgiving of a person I am, because I've sat in here, I think 2 or 3 times now, rooting for Travis Etienne after, just a disgraceful last year and how bad he burned me. But, I'll be the bigger man here.
Absolutely.
And so it's going to be Travis Etienne. And some of my arguments are honestly pretty similar to yours with Ramondre. So in 2023, he was running back 3 on the year. And then he follows it up with the running back 35, and he only missed 2 games. The attempts were way down. Targets came down as well. That was a big piece of Travis Etienne, is they used him in the passing game, which is why he was so explosive in that 2023 season. Trevor Lawrence also missed time this year, but we saw guys like Brian Thomas Jr. still have a great year with Mac Jones, so I'm not going to really put too much stake into that. The big concern for me for Travis Etienne is the snap percentage and his usage from last year. Tank Bigsby started eating into that. If I pull up his snap percentages here, so his rookie year he had a 60% snap percentage. 2023 had 73. Last year he's down to 48, which is pretty alarming drop. He even went down to 51% of the running back attempts, rushing attempts last year. The running back targets, he's still up there. He's north of 70. He was at 71% last year, 80% in 2023. So it's not necessarily the target share that I'm worried about. It's the attempts at running the ball that is pretty scary for me. But like I said, the passing upside is still there, and he still has a college connection with Trevor Lawrence. They've played in the league a couple of years together now. And the big argument for me for Travis Etienne is Liam Cohen coming over and becoming the head coach. The run game is huge in Liam Cohen offenses. Go look at Tampa Bay the last couple of years. And I think what makes this a little bit easier for me is, so last year, we see the rise of Bucky Irving. After Rashad White was coming off, I think, RB7 year.
Yeah,
like he was definitely in the top 10 the year prior. So, Bucky comes onto the scene and he rips up the place, and everybody kind of forgets about Rashad White. Rashad White was still the running back 22 last year. Obviously, I think I don't think he returned any ADP value based off of that finish. But Liam Cohen was still able to have two top 24 fantasy running backs,
yes,
a part of his team. So it's not like it's impossible if you are worried about Tank Bigsby or Byshell Tootin. So I think it is still possible there. I think the Liam Cohen edition is huge. And then where he's being drafted very similar to Ramondre Stevenson here in the 9th round. He's going at the 901. He's going behind guys like Jalen Warren, Brian Robinson Jr., and Najee Harris, and then maybe a couple picks before Ramondre. Mm-hmm. So it's a similar scenario where at this point in your draft, you're drafting flex guys, probably bench spots, depending on what positions you had taken earlier on in the draft. But specifically Jalen Warren, Brian Robinson Jr., and Najee Harris, I wrote these names down for a reason. None of those names to me have the potential that Travis Etienne could have. Even if Travis Etienne blows up in your face, I'd rather have a guy who we saw 2 years ago be the running back 3, and all of a sudden he's sitting behind guys who are, Jalen Warren's the second running back on his depth chart probably after Caleb Johnson gets a couple weeks. Brian Robinson Jr., good running back, but doesn't scare me for fantasy.
No, he's a steady guy. He's not going to give me any ceiling.
Exactly, and Najee Harris, sure, maybe he becomes the workhorse the first few weeks, but at some point it's going to be Omarion Hampton. And we just saw Najee, leave Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was obviously not happy with the production they were getting. So it's out of those 3 guys, he's being drafted behind them. Travis Etienne has the ability to be a top 10 running back because we've seen it.
Yeah, I agree with this pick 100% with you. The one thing I want to highlight as well, just to kind of add to your argument, is that when we can only take the data that we get from the previous year, but when Liam Cohen was the offensive coordinator in Tampa Bay, Bucky Irvin had a 43% carry split, and Rashad White had a 30% carry split. So there's about a 13% difference, and then Sean Tucker had 10%. But basically, what I'm trying to say with those data points is that it looks like Liam Cohen finds whoever the running back is, and they get the majority of the carries. Now, you could probably spin this and say, all right, Travis Etienne is the pass catcher, so he's going to get the Rashad White role. I don't believe that, because I think he's a more talented running back overall than Tank Bigsby. So I could totally see Liam Cohen saying, this is my lead dog. This is the guy who's going to get the majority of the carries, and he's going to get the touches in the backfield. I think we both agree that Jacksonville is an offense that it looks to take a step forward in 2025, and I think it's a great value to take him at the 901.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, let's say Tank Bigsby and Tootin, do still eat into Travis Etienne's, share of the rushing attempts and maybe even the targets, and you're still not getting a great return out of Etienne, but. Like I said, last year, Liam Cohen still had 2 running backs in the top 24. I think where he's being drafted, if Etienne ends up being a top 24 running back, there had to be some weeks in there that he won you a week.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to move into the wide receiver category, and I'm going to start it off with someone we talked about at the top of the show. I'm going to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. All right, listen, we need to relax on the Marvin Harrison Jr. hate. You know what I mean? I know that he was a highly touted
that boy's been in receiver. The gym. You've seen his pictures?
Oh, I have seen it.
If I was a girl.
I'm excited. We need to relax. He had a normal rookie season, and that is okay. It's okay to just have a normal rookie season. Now, if he busted and had a bad rookie season, this would be a different story, and he probably wouldn't be a bounce-back candidate. But he had 116 targets for 62 receptions, 885, and he had 8 touchdowns. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And so now you take the bet on someone like Marvin Harrison Jr. because, if taking the bet on a year 2 running back, wide receiver is good for fantasy business. You invest in those guys because they often tend to break out, and then you have a great value on your hands. I'll get into the ADP in a second, but I think, now that he has a full offseason and he's able to build a relationship with Kyler Murray, he's got that offseason to learn the playbook, and also, the offensive coordinator, who's Drew Petzing, has a year now to really understand. I'm sure Drew Petzing has heard the hate over social media and through the media in itself about underutilizing Marvin Harrison Jr. If I were Drew Petzing, I would make it a statement to just absolutely pepper this guy with targets.
As you should.
And I think that is good for business if you're the Arizona Cardinals. Peppering someone like Marvin Harrison Jr. with targets can only mean good things for you.
Good for the brand.
Good for the team in general.
Puts butts in seats.
The other thing I want to point out is that Arizona has the 6th weakest strength of schedule. So that means that they're going to be playing bad teams. And, even if you believe I think Arizona is going to take a step forward as a team, but if you think they're going to be a bad team, that just means that they're going to stay in games or not be as behind in games, and they're going to have to continue to throw the ball to stay in.
Oh, yeah.
The other two things I want to point out is outside of Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the only target around. I'm not scared of Michael Wilson. I'm not scared of Greg Dortch. Like, none of these guys scare me. I think when you break down this passing game in Arizona, it's Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., check out. There's no one else to consider. And if I'm Kyler Murray, I'm only targeting those two guys. There's no one worth, targeting that's going to be as special as those two targets. And the last thing I'm going to say is that James Conner is going to be another year older. He's going to his age 31 season, I believe. And, we talk about all the time about running backs who hit that 30-year-old age cliff and fall off the face of the planet. And that could be something where, they may take touches away from him to keep him either fresher because they're going deeper into the season, or he's just not as good as he is, and the passing volume is going to increase, which means more targets for Marvin Harrison Jr. I'll have to look it up right now, Wu, but I'm going to look up the ADP for Marvin Harrison Jr.
Okay.
But what do you think about that?
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and echo everything you just said. We've talked about Marvin Harrison Jr. I think everybody knows at this point that we're both in on him. One of the things I've said is last year I was very pleasantly surprised at what the Cardinals offense, and just as a team in general, I forget what they ended up, finishing on the year, but I was not expecting them to be. I figured they'd be a 4, 5, maybe 6 win team. I think they ended up with like 7 or 8 or 9 in that kind of range. So like a couple more than I was thinking, but I was just honestly just pleasantly surprised with the offense as well. I wasn't sure what they were going to get out of Gannon as a head coach. I think he surprised me as well, and I think they're going to continue to build off of that. Marvin Harrison, he gets his rookie year out of the way. He clearly went to work in the offseason. He's put on a ton of muscle. He's going to be way more physical because I think that's one of the other big things is, we see these guys dominate, especially like wide receivers in college. You see these guys dominate, especially a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, it's noon on a Saturday every day, and it's like, oh, my God, it's 12:30. He already has 3 touchdowns and 120 yards.
Right.
And it's not even halftime yet. And so I think the big jump is like the physicality difference, especially with these corners. Even though in the NFL, corners aren't always the biggest, but they can be physical, man, and they're still just as fast as you are. So I think it's great that he put on a bunch of muscle. I think that's going to help him out a lot in terms of contact and, going up for jump balls and, just being the alpha one that we all expected him to be.
Yeah. So right now he's going at the 311. He is the wide receiver 17 off the board. And as I'm looking at it, I think he's appropriately ranked right now where he is. So, I'll give you a couple of names.
Mm-hmm.
Would you rather have Marvin Harrison Jr. or T. Higgins?
Marvin Harrison.
Would you rather have Marvin Harrison Jr. or Garrett Wilson?
Oh, man, you're going to do that to me? Man.
I know my decision.
I know Garrett Wilson's going to get peppered with targets, but I expect the Cardinals' offense to be better. So it's a matter of, oh, man, that's so tough. I mean, in the mock draft today, I went Garrett Wilson at the 210 and then Marvin Harrison at the 303. So I definitely went ADP game there.
Mm-hmm.
Man. Oh, no.
Do you want me to tell you what my answer would be?
Yeah, because I'm going to say Garrett Wilson.
It's Garrett Wilson. It's not even close. So, because just like you said, he's going to get peppered with targets.
It's the Cardinals. The Cardinals offense is going to be better. It's just a fact.
Right. And then the last one I have for you is Marvin Harrison Jr. or Terry McLaurin.
Marvin Harrison Jr. No question.
So like, there's some wiggle room there, for him to be better, but I think he's appropriately priced. But if you want to take the stab at him, if you want to take him at the beginning of the third round, I'm fine with that.
I did it. It was great. Even if I didn't take Garrett Wilson in the second and I took a running back, having Jamar Chase and Marvin Harrison as an example, I'm so set on that.
Absolutely.
So happy with that.
So that is that's my rationale for Marvin Harrison Jr. But you're up next, and another man we just talked about.
It's gonna be Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, baby.
I think from last year, it was a bad year all across the board for the Dolphins. We've talked about this with many of the pieces. Tua, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. A-Chain was really the only shining star out of all that. I think he ended up being the running back 5. Mm-hmm. He was really the only bright spot of that Miami offense, but Tyreek Hill, this man has been scorching hot for fantasy for like damn near a decade. It was just 1 year, man, just 1 year. Like, it's okay. Bad seasons happen. Tua dealt with injuries. I've said this before. They were 1 year removed from being one of the top offenses in all of football in 2023. With Tyreek Hill, I get the age piece. He's 31. But, I don't think last year was, the start of a drop-off. I think it was just a bad year all around for Miami. Just a lot of weird things going on, especially with the Tua situation. You don't know. At one point, we didn't know if he was coming back to play football ever again.
Right.
Like, at one point, it was a question of this. He might not play. But I don't think last year was a start of the decline. I think we all see the physical traits of Tyreek Hill. Like, I don't think he's lost a step in that case. Maybe he's got a little mental. Sometimes he comes up in the news. He's done that a little bit recently. But in terms of the talent on the football field, I don't think that's gone away. One thing I found interesting was the yards per catch last year was the lowest in some time. So where did I have it? Where's my tab here? Okay, so I lost it. Hold on.
What were you looking for? His yards per catch?
Yeah, I got it right here.
Oh, okay.
So last year he was 11.84, so we'll call it 12. The years prior to that, he was 15 yards per catch, 14 yards per catch, 11, 14, 15, 17, 16. So clearly, the offense as a whole had taken a step back last year. We've seen Tyreek Hill be this big explosive play guy. That just wasn't happening last year. It was also his lowest amount of touchdowns since his rookie year. He only had 6. And prior to that, he made 13, 7, 9, 15, 7, 12. Like, that's not a stat he's usually lacking in. And that plays into his big playability because he can beat everybody up the field and, rip off an 80-yard touchdown out of nowhere. So that's another number I want to look at. But, the argument here is that, the targets are absolutely still there. And there's even an argument that there's even more targets to be had because now Jonnu Smith is gone. I'm expecting a bounce back from this offensive unit as a whole. And where he's going, he's being drafted at the 303. He's going behind guys like JSN, Ladd McConkey, and A.J. Brown. And I like all 3 of those names. JSN probably the at last out of those 3. Mm-hmm. But what you can possibly get out of Tyreek Hill based on where he's being drafted. So I'm going to look at this mock today. He was taken at the end of the second round. He's going around the 303, but he's taken at the end of the second round. I just named, Ladd McConkey and A.J. Brown, who you ended up going at the 112 in the 2-1. And then JSN went, in the second third of the second round. So I'm waiting all that way back on Tyreek Hill, and he's possibly my wide receiver 2, who has top 8 upside. I mean, at a minimum.
Let's be honest. I think he's still the guy who's got top 3 potentially 100%. Wide receiver. He was
the number 1. I took him number 1 last year in some drafts.
Right. I agree with you. I think we are going to sit back at the end of this season that comes up and just
how did you not take him?
Can you imagine that we were all afraid of his 2024?
I think this is our Derrick Henry.
This is
our way to get back from that Derrick Henry.
Right. Because I truly think with the absence now of Jonnu Smith, there's just going to be more targets for him. And I was just looking at the year he was the wide receiver 2 in Miami. He had 171 targets, and the year before that, he had 170 targets. So he lost about 50 targets last year, and what better way to do it with the absence of Jonnu Smith? Maybe he won't get back up to 170 targets. Maybe he gets to 155 to 160, but that's still awesome. Like I'm just also looking at his career box score. Outside of his rookie season,
Ridiculous.
He's the wide receiver 4, 1, 30. He was hurt 2, 6, 2, 2. And then last year was the 23.
It's unbelievable. And even on last year was a down year, he still had 123 targets. Like that's not a number you can just scoff at. It's not like they weren't throwing him the ball. Just the offense as a whole just wasn't working.
Right. I don't know, man.
And the touchdowns are going to come up. Let's be real.
I might be in.
I'm in.
I might be in.
I'm in. I'll tell you that.
So just to round out our last position group for our bounce back candidates, we're going to go into the tight ends. My choice is T.J. Hawkinson, the tight end for the Minnesota Vikings. I just want to highlight. So last year, obviously, finished as the tight end 33 last year, but it was coming off of an ACL injury in 2023 where he had gotten in at the end of the season. I do want to highlight, however, his 2023 when he was the tight end 2. Yeah, you heard that right, ladies and gentlemen. TJ Hawkinson was the tight end 2. TJ Hawkinson was 127 targets, 95 receptions, 960 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And that was only playing within 15 games. If he played 2 more games, and I apologize, he was the wide receiver 4, which was a better season than what he had the year before when he was the wide receiver 2. But if he played two more games in 2023, he would have probably been talked about as the number 1 tight end.
Yep.
But anyways, he's now fully healthy, and I think he can establish himself as the second option in Minnesota. That's right, I said the second option, because you need to remember that Jordan Addison is likely going to be suspended for the first 3 games because of his speeding incident at the in 2024. Yep. Obviously they let him play the year out, but now we're all expecting him to receive that suspension going into this year, and due to the handbook, it looks like it's going to be about like 3 games. So I think Hawkinson can establish himself as the second option behind Jefferson. The other thing you want to point out is Hawkinson's only 28 years old. He hasn't even hit 30 years old yet.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean?
He looks like he's 40.
He does. You look at him, he looks like he's 40, but
Caveman.
He's someone who has been in the league for a long time and is still only 28 years old. He hasn't even hit 30. He's someone who I believe can become a safety valve for J.J. McCarthy as he develops as an NFL quarterback. We all trust Kevin O'Connell as an offensive mind to get them, get his quarterbacks in shape, but I think there's going to be some growing pains as the season goes along, and what better way to get yourself through it than having someone like TJ Hawkinson to dump the ball off, be that safety valve, and just get an easy, quick, 5 to 7 yards, on a reception. So again, like I said, last time he played a full season, he was the tight end 4. The year before that, he was the tight end 2 with 129 targets, 89 receptions for 914 yards and 6 touchdowns. So right now he's going at the 502. So he is the tight end 4 off the board, but I think he is appropriately ranked for where he is.
Oh, yeah.
I think, ceiling wise, as I look at it, I think it's going to be tough to beat either Bowers or McBride, but I think he has an opportunity to possibly jump Kittle for the tight end 3.
And definitely Laporta as well, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. So if you're someone who's sitting in a draft, right, and you're at the point where you could take Kittle in the middle of the 4th, I would wait and just wait till it swings back to you and see if you can get someone like TJ Hawkinson, because that waiting and taking someone like Hawkinson in the 5th, you just got a better, but you got a blue chip player in another position. You could go quarterback if you wanted to. You could go another wide receiver or another running back. It's just another player to fill your arsenal, and TJ Hawkinson kind of follows it up and could potentially finish out better than George Kittle. I don't know. That's my opinion. I don't know if you believe me or you're with me or not, Will.
I love the Hawk hype. I love the idea of, obviously, aside from Justin Jefferson, because it's silly to even bring him up this way, but I love the idea of Hawkinson becoming McCarthy's favorite target, always open within 10 yards. maybe a play breaks down, and, he's kind of panicking, and or I know I got Hawkinson down there somewhere because he's sick. He's pretty big, isn't he?
Yes, I have it up. He is
6'5", 250. Like, that's a big target to
monster.
miss. Like, JJ McCarthy can probably get himself out of trouble using him. And the Kevin O'Connell piece, like, I think you could throw anybody in here, and he would find a way to, for them to have value and be productive. And obviously Hawkinson isn't just anybody. Like, he is a very good tight end in this league. He has been for many years now. And I think where he's being drafted, I think you're right. I think it's a very appropriate. It's not too high, too low. And I think you can get really smart here with some of your picks. If you are someone who likes to go tight end a little bit early, give yourself that positional advantage on a week-to-week basis. Doing that in the 5th round, it's not going to kill you.
Yeah. Just because I'm curious, and doing it from a dynasty perspective, do you think TJ Hawkinson is someone that you should invest in if you're a contender this year?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, like I just said, tight ends and quarterbacks it's a positional advantage when you get one of those top guys who can consistently finish in the top 5, rather than being a position that you're streaming on a week-to-week basis, or for dynasty purposes. Like, I have teams with some weaker tight ends, and I'm kind of switching them out every week just based on a matchup. Where Hawkinson, I can be confident really no matter who he plays. So yeah, if you're in a position to compete, it also brings that intimidation factor of, going at your opponent that next week, the confidence seeing, maybe they're streaming a tight end that week and they see Hawkinson in your starting spot. You're like, oh, well, you got a guy right there. I wouldn't if I'm in a position to compete, maybe I would give up a good amount just to make sure I have him, just to lock in that piece.
I was just looking at,
because I think you could get 3 really good years out of him still.
Yeah, I was just looking at Keep Trade Cuts database for some trades, and one trade I really loved was Hawkinson for a 25-second and a 26-second.
Wow,
I would turn around that all day long.
I might send that out tonight. I was thinking, like, maybe if you had I don't know, like, some leagues, every league has different trade values, and sometimes a big trade happens and it kind of sets the market, and then the trades following that are based off of that. Sometimes you can see 1st-round picks getting thrown around like there's no tomorrow. Right. I know I've done that, left hand up, but I was gonna say maybe I would even consider giving up Hawkinson for a first. If you're in a good position to compete this year, I think you still get 3 very good years out of Hawkinson. And usually, I would say dynasty is about a 2 to 3 year window of if you're able to compete. Like, I think that's your window there. Anything longer than that, I don't know. It gets a little weird there. It's fantasy. Anything can happen. If I'm competing for a championship and tight end's a weak position, and I have the draft assets for it, I'd do that.
Yeah. All right. Time for you to round it out with your tight end pick.
Fergie, Jake Ferguson. I've talked about the Cowboys season in 2023 multiple times, and I'm going back to it yet again. The last time we saw a healthy Dak for 17 games, Jake Ferguson was the tight end 9. He had 102 targets, 71 receptions, 5 touchdowns, finished with 177 fantasy points on the year. That would have made him the tight end 7 this year.
Wow.
And I think if that is the case, the conversation about Jake Ferguson is a lot different. I think there's some dynasty interest in there as well if that was the case. And I believe he is an important piece of this offense. And I think the addition of George Pickens bodes really well for Jake Ferguson. We know Pickens as someone who's going to stretch the field, go routes up the sideline, go for those long balls, the jump ball where he makes these ridiculous catches. And, we'll see Ferguson roaming free in the short to intermediate, range with, there's not going to be any safety help on him. He's probably just going to be one-on-one with a linebacker. I don't know, with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens on the on the outsides. Like, how are you going to still have, extra help on Jake Ferguson at that point? You have to be focused on those 2 guys. So I think the opportunity there for Jake Ferguson is huge. And, the Cowboys still, I don't know how they do it, Jerry Jones masterclass, still lack a running game after all of these years. So we know Dak's going to be throwing the ball a lot, and they have enough pass catchers to keep up with a pace like that. I just think the whole situation for Jake Ferguson, from that 2023 season, I think last year you can throw it out the window.
Without Dak.
Exactly. So I just think based off, his finish in 2023, that would have made the tight end 7 this year. I just think the opportunity is so good for Jake Ferguson to be such a sleeper, because he is He's being drafted at the 10:04. He's going behind David Njoku, who I really like as a player, but who is throwing him the football?
Nobody
knows. And there's 4 different options, and all 4 of them could be an absolute dumpster fire.
They're not as good as Dak.
Exactly. And then the other name he's going behind is Dalton Kincaid, who is a great college prospect. We've yet to see him really do anything in the NFL.
Yeah, it sucks because I really like Kincaid and I would like to see him take a step forward. But
who are you more confident in this year?
I'm more confident in Dak Prescott throwing the ball more than I am Josh Allen.
It's not the Buffalo style. Like,
right.
You know, Buffalo's going to want to run the ball. They're going to punch you in the mouth. It's going to be cold in December. You know, they're going to run the ball.
And when they get in the red zone, it's going to be Josh Allen running the ball in. You know, Dak could probably still do it, but I think Dak loves to hit his tight ends. From all the years that we've watched Dak Prescott, he loves to get the tight ends involved on top of his other receiving options. You know, look at Dalton Schultz, Jason Witten, and Jake Ferguson in 2023. So I think that's an awesome play.
He's definitely a name I'm keeping an eye on late in drafts. I don't remember where he went in the mock today.
I was going to say, that was exactly where I was looking.
He went at the 10:02. Because I had gone Kyler there, so I wasn't really thinking tight end at that point.
Yeah, but even still, I know it's Team 11 and it was a computer, but that's their second tight end.
Right. A lot of these names fall too, like with these mock drafts with the computer pick. Like a lot of these names will start to fall a lot further.
Right. You might be able to take them even later. Yeah. Like in our league standpoint, I would say. So that's interesting. But so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are our 2025 bounce back candidates.
Don't say we didn't tell you so.
I was gonna say, so I would save this episode for later when you're getting closer to your league drafts and you want to kind of refer back to some information that we've given you throughout this episode. You can always come back to this and look at it because listen, at the end of the day, stats never lie. You know what I mean? Numbers never lie. So that it's something to really kind of come back to reference and just kind of get another perspective on players that you may be potentially drafting. So we appreciate you watching. Like I said at the top of the show, please make sure you're following us on all of our socials. Twitter at 4th and Fantasy Pod, Instagram and TikTok at 4th and Fantasy, YouTube at 4th and Fantasy. Make sure you're giving us a like, a rating, leave a comment because you may see yourself on the show next time. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, can I leak it, Wu? Can I tell us what the next episode is?
Yes.
Mock draft,
yes. Baby. I mean, we did one today. Now all we want to do is mock drafts.
Yeah. So next episode, you'll catch us in a mock draft, and we'll be kind of talking more strategy with you as we get you prepped for your drafts this upcoming summer. But
maybe there'll be some guests.
Yeah, maybe. You never know. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you on the other side.
Yeah.